guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to show you how to achieve this shimmery smoky eye. One of the colours from the eyeshadow palette didn't work out how I wanted it to, so I'm going to show you how to correct a smoky eye when it's going wrong, particularly when it goes patchy. I love the face makeup for this look, so you could also pair this with any kind of makeup look. So let's get started. I have put my hair into some heatless curls. This is actually only after 15 minutes of using it. I have a little technique that I've adopted recently for days when I want my hair to look nice and curly. I just don't have the time to wait or sleep on it. So if you want to see that technique, let me know in the comment section below and I will do a new tutorial. I have two new heatless hair tutorials which I will link on screen for you now. One for short hair and the other one is for side sleepers who struggle with sleeping with the robe in because it's a little bit uncomfortable. If you get any flyaways or you feel like you just want to define your curls a little bit further, you can use something like this. This is the Redken Argan Oil. I love this one because it's really good for your hair, but also it just makes your curls look a little bit smoother. If you have particularly fine hair, you might find it to be a little bit heavy, but as you can see, it just makes those curls look a bit sleeker. I've gone to this effort, however I am going to pin it out of the way so you probably won't really see much of my curls today, but it means once I've finished I will have nice hair for the rest of the day. To start with, I'm going to use this Plump and Juicy Vegan Collagen Spray On Serum by Kosas. This literally arrived at my door before I started filming, so I have some new products to use. Over that, I'm going to apply the Kosas Revealer Skin Improving Foundation, which has an SPF of 25. On my skin at the moment, I only have some SPF on from earlier. That's why I use the serum spray just to revive my skin a little bit. From what I can see on their website, they have around 36 shades. They have light, medium, medium deep and deep, and they come in cool, neutral, warm and olive undertones. The foundation itself is a medium coverage, but it definitely feels lightweight, and I like that it almost looks quite hydrating but not at all greasy or oily looking. Because I gravitate to a lot more lighter weight foundations now, this is probably as heavy as I would go if I was going on a night out, for instance, because I'd still want my skin to look like skin, which this does, but you do feel made up wearing it, if that makes sense. It does contain hyaluronic acid, niacinamide, peptides, squalane, vitamin B5, arnica and caffeine, so all geared towards hydrating, brightening, plumping and smoothing and protecting that skin. If you're wondering for colour reference, I'm using light, medium, neutral, warm 190. You can of course work this in with your fingers, but I'm just using a beauty blender for a really nice airbrushed finish to the skin. It's not a bad match. When there's nothing else on the face, it's easier to see that it looks slightly more yellow, but it definitely is workable. So I'm just applying some lip balm by Authored, and then I'm going to move straight onto my eyes. The palette I'm reaching for today is this one by Ciate London. This is the palette called Spice. This is a great one for fall, but obviously we are heading into spring, so I'm going to stick with some more of the neutral colours. For an inner corner highlight, I'm taking this shade on the top right hand corner. This is a really beautiful, almost pinky beige shimmer, and I'm working this in so it looks less frosted and just a very sort of soft shimmer. Use what's left on your bristles to pull that underneath across the tear duct. Then I'm going in with this light peachy shade. This is a matte finish, and this is going to be the transitional shade that we take through the socket. This is the one we're going to take the highest. I'm using a big blending brush to make this nice and quick. This is the rephr 27 brush. This is another medium peachy brown shade, slightly more intense than the first colour. And using that same brush, we're going to buff this in circular motions on the outer third of the mobile lid and into that socket. So we're going to buff it into the shade we've already applied. This is where things took a little turn, so I'm going to take this brown shade. This is a nice medium chocolate brown, and using a flat shader brush, I was patting this on to the outer third of the lid. This is where I was going to build up that smoke. Initially it laid down okay. It started to get a little bit patchy, especially when I used my blending brush, and it was on one particular area it didn't want to stick to. And you might come across this with slightly cheaper eyeshadows. It does tend to do this more with cheaper eyeshadows. It can do it with more expensive ones as well. Sometimes they just don't want to play ball. I feel like it was definitely more visible in the flesh, but you can see where I'm pointing with the arrow. This is the area it didn't want to stick to. So I had to go in with an eyeshadow pencil. There wasn't a darker shade in the palette for me to start working on building this shade, so I'm using a pencil, and then you have to blend this in quickly because it's a nude sticks one, so it does set in place. This is going to allow me to work eyeshadows over the top of it, so I won't have a patch. However, you are now going to need to be able to blend this in and make it look a lot more seamless. Remember, this is going to be slightly more difficult because we've applied this over powders already, whereas if you apply this straight onto the skin, it's a lot easier to blend. So now I'm going back in with my flat shader brush and that same chocolate brown powder, and I'm working this over the top of the pencil. Use a patted motion for a more even finish, then use what's left on your bristles to blend out the seams slightly. Now I don't want to take the brown too high, so I'm going to go back in with the socket shade, which is this medium toned peachy brown, and I'm going to buff this over the seam of that chocolate eyeshadow. Initially it's going to look slightly ashy, but just trust the process. Work this over the seam and down onto that brown eyeshadow first. You'll start to see it softens the seam between the two shades. Then we're going to go back into our palette and dip our brush into a tiny amount of that shade as well as the brown shade. Tap off the excess and again start buffing over the seam. You'll start to get a really nice gradient between the two shades. So just to recap that, apply the first socket shade over the seam first until it starts to soften that brown, then dip your brush back into that socket shade and a little bit of that brown, and then rebuff over the seams. So now we're back on track. I'm going back into the palette and I'm taking this bronzy gold shimmery tone on my finger because the shimmery metallic shades always have a better payoff when you use your finger. This is going directly on the center of the eyelid, and then once we've applied that, we're going to use what's left on our finger to bounce that into the brown eyeshadow so we have a nice gradient between the two shades. We're going to layer over this with the first shade that we applied on the inner corner of the eyes. So it will be nice and bright coming from that inner corner highlight, and then as we get towards the gold shade and we blend over it, it will give a subtle difference in tone because that gold bronze is underneath. As I said earlier, use a swiping motion when you apply this, that way it will look less chunky and frosted and will give more of a soft satin shimmer. This also helps make the eye look less warm because we have quite warm shades in that socket. And that's what's nice about this palette. You can either go on the rusted side or you can go on the pinkier side. Going back to the palette, I'm taking the first shade, which is this bone colour in a matte finish, and on a flat shader brush, I'm sweeping this over the brow bone. As you can see, it flattens the area, but it still brightens, and it also helps if you've made any kind of like blending mishaps and you want something to look a bit seamless. You can go in with this shade if you're a similar tone to me because it's flesh toned. In order to frame the eye, we're going to mimic the colours that we have on our top lid under our lower eyelash line. So I'm starting with the medium peachy tone that we have through the socket. This is going underneath our lower eyelash line, and then closer to the root of the eyelashes, I'm going in with the chocolate brown shade. It's less of a problem underneath our lower eyelashes because it's a smaller area, so it won't look as patchy or chalky. Once we've done that, we're going to move on to some eyeliner. I'm using this one by Hourglass. This is the waterproof gel eyeliner. This is their black shade, and it's such a nice soft pencil, and it really is hard to remove, which is a good sign if you want longevity. If you do struggle to remove it, use an oil-based cleanser. This is going along the waterline, and we're also going to tight line with that, which means we blink onto the tip of the pencil and we coat our top waterline. Getting rid of this pinky tone is a great way to enhance a smoky eye. Next, I'm taking an angled liner brush and I've coated the bristles using the top of the pencil, and I'm running that along the top lash line. And the reason I've done it with the angled liner brush is so that it's a softer finish, so you can really build it up to the intensity that you want. I want a very light coat across the top lash line so it's smudgy and it doesn't look like I've applied eyeliner, but more of a dark shadow. On the outer corner, I'm turning the bristles round and pulling the colour upwards so it's slightly thicker on that outer edge. I am going to be applying some false eyelashes, so I'm just using a very light coat of mascara. I think this one was the Push Up Mascara by Charlotte Tilbury. Yep, I can see by the handle it is. This is a really great one because it's very, very black. It's almost like a wet look black, and I really, really love that, especially for a smoky eye. Every step is completely optional. This look alone with mascara would be great, but I've kind of not been using falsies quite as much recently, so I decided I'll reach for my favourite lash base ones. These are the LB01 lashes. They are quite full on, but I adore them because they're super fluffy looking. If you want to try some lash base lashes for yourself, you can use my discount code whether you're in the UK, the US or the EU. Moving back onto the face, I'm reaching for my Kosas Revealer Concealer. From what I can see on the website, there looks like there's around 28 shades. I'm using shade 4, which is a neutral undertone, and as you can see, I'm using the tiniest amount. I'm using a little bit under my eyes to clean up because this is a similar colour to the foundation, and I'm also applying a little bit down the nasal labial folds because I tend to get a little bit red around there. Like the foundation, this is a medium coverage, it's extremely creamy and it blends into the foundation beautifully. To set the skin, I'm going to use the Kosas Cloud Setting Powder. I think this comes in around 10 shades. I have the shade Feathery, which is a sheer light medium, and I really like this. This is such a nice powder, I've never used it before. It's very lightweight, it gives a nice airbrushed finish to the skin. It's like a baked finish, so it does give that airbrushed finish to the skin and it does kind of give a blurring effect. I'm now going to use the contour stick by Sosu. Ordinarily you wouldn't use a cream product when you've powdered, but I've made sure not to powder over the area that I'm applying the contour, and I'm only applying a very light amount. My beauty blender has a tiny amount of the foundation still remaining in the sponge, so I'm using this to bounce over the area that I've applied the contour to create a softer finish. As you can see, it blends into the skin beautifully. I have a lot of contour sticks, a lot of them are very expensive, but this is super affordable and it is my favourite for its colour, its finish, the way it blends into the skin like butter. It's just fantastic. If you've never tried it, I will link it below for you. It's definitely worth a try. I think it cost about £10. As you can see, it's not too warm and it's not too cool where it looks ashy on the skin. I've never really been a fan of using this on myself because it's so glowy and I feel like it just enhances skin texture, but since I've been using Skin & Me and my Zoe products, my skin has been so much better. My skin texture has been fantastic, so I can use products that are slightly more highlighted without it looking awful on my skin. I pay for all my own skincare. I pay for my Skin & Me prescription doser, but if you guys want to try it, you can use my code, which you will all get one as well. It's not an influencer thing. You all get your own code when you sign up and it will give you 1 month for free, and you just pay for your postage, which would be £3.50. It's so good for anti-aging and pigmentation and everything. But anyway, I will link it below for you if you want to try that. This Charlotte Tilbury Cheek to Chic is fantastic. I've used the blush shade first on my cheeks and now I'm going in with a highlight from the centre. You can swirl and pop the whole lot on, but I wanted to be a bit more strategic in not going overboard on my cheeks. So now that I've got the glow where I want it, I'm going to go back in with a little bit of powder through the centre of my face to make sure that that's not come too far forward and that I've got highlight where I want it and no shine where I don't. For lips, I couldn't find a colour that would be perfect, so I'm going to take the Anastasia Beverly Hills Sun-Baked Matte Lipstick, but I'm also going to pop a little bit of concealer in the centre just to lighten it a little bit. It is a beautiful colour and you could totally wear this with this eye look, but as I'm somebody who doesn't like to wear lipstick, I feel like for me it's a bit too intense, and you'll agree when you see once I've finished that it definitely looks better with this eye makeup after it's been slightly muted. Feel free to use a lip liner if you like. I'm not a fan of lip liner, it just makes my lips look weird. So I just prefer to go in with the lipstick on its own, and as you can see it looks so much nicer. Now I've applied a little bit of the concealer to the centre. And that completes today's makeup look. I hope you enjoyed seeing how to correct makeup when it goes a little bit awry. I will list and link all the products I've used in the description bar along with any discount codes. If you want to try Skin & Me, I'll also link my code there for you. Come follow me outside of YouTube over on Instagram. I share all the new products that I receive over there on my stories. You can request to see them over here on YouTube, and I will see you in a couple of days with another video. Bye guys!